glasses. I can't find my glasses. Has anybody seen my glasses?
Please God, not today.
We are gathered here today with the purpose of uniting in matrimony George Esteban Garea, Benjamin Arthur Hull.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Your love, your dedication, your commitment to each other are an example to be followed.
Word got out to the Archdiocese. You've all known this whole time that Ben and I have been living together.
The decision is effective immediately.
Now, we invited you all here today because, well, you're family. With my private lessons and Ben's pension, we need a place to stay.
Why are we even talking about this? I'm the only one with the extra bedroom.
No, it's not about that, Mindy. It's a Poughkeepsie.
I didn't have a very productive day.
You know my favorite story of yours?
What's the neighbors again?
No, it's your uncle.
Which one is your favorite?
Well, they're only just now deciding to have dinner. Someone's just turned up with a bloody baby.
Uncle Ben.
My friend is here. We need to work on a school presentation, and there's nowhere else for us to.
Who?
That's so gay.
He doesn't mean homosexual, Uncle Ben. He just means stupid.
Hey, have some private time, please?
When you live with people, you know them better than you care to.
There was a famous sip-in right here in this bar.
Oh my God, you're that guy?
Yeah, it's one of the guys.
Wow. Well, this runs on me, fellas.
You are such a liar.
Hello, check. Hi, guys. So that was Love is Strange, the trailer, and we're very lucky to have John Lithgow and the director Ira Sachs with us here today. Come on up, guys. Of course. So this is the first time we're meeting. We just did a 40-minute HuffPost Live interview.
We got lots to talk about, so don't worry.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. One of the things that we talked about in the interview that I think, just to get into it right away, is, John, you noticed so many things that were cut out from the script. And obviously, filmmaking is a process from casting to editing. I'm curious, Ira, if the film now would work as a script, or if that script needed all of those elements to get people involved.
You know, I find that as a creative person, the process is really, it keeps changing. And with film particularly, I find that you make 3 films in the course of making a movie. You write one, and you think that's the film, and you talk to people about it, and you believe it at 100%. Then you shoot another film, and you're on set, and you imagine the film being something in a certain way, and then you start editing a film, and it's actually the 3rd film, and that's the one that lives on. And there is always that process, and it's extremely important during that process to be open to change and also really to listening to what's right in front of you. Eventually, you realize that by taking something out, you give voice to another element, or you allow something to breathe. And sometimes in creative work, 2 and 2 does not make 4, it can make 3.
Would you say open as well as optimistic? Because some days things are great, but they're not going the exact way that you imagined, and it could be very easy to get discouraged.
This was one of the easiest I've worked on, to be honest. I think, you know, there's something very old-fashioned. I don't think, or maybe, hopefully, it'll be called classic, but, you know, about the story, that it really, we knew very much where the beginning, middle, and end was, and the editing process was, we finished shooting in October 1st. We were at Sundance premiering the film in January. So it was a very fluid process to get from what we shot to what the film is.
And John, you've also said that this is one of the easiest ways that you've worked, working with both Ira and Alfred Molina and working off of such an incredible script. But you still had to have some kind of process going into the day, I would imagine. Talk to me about what your process was for this film and how it may have differed from past roles.
You know, I really can't remember doing any preparing at all, beyond spending a lot of time with Ira and talking in a couple of weeks prior to actually shooting. I jumped into the film 2 weeks into their shooting, so that there was a bit of a process already going. Fred it's in the nature of the story, these are two guys who have lived together their whole lives and are separated. So Fred's solo turns were in the first week, my solo turns were in the last week, and in the middle 2 weeks is when we worked together. So I jumped on this speeding freight train. There was just an air of relaxation and ease. There was almost, the line was blurred between hanging out and acting in front of the camera. Very much the way Ira wanted it. He wanted our real lives to inform the film lives of these two characters. So there was just ease about it. I have to say it took a little getting used to, because I'm accustomed to far more preparation, rehearsal, spending time timing things, polishing the gem the way I'm accustomed to doing when I rehearse a play. Ira was not interested in that. What he was interested in was something catching fire in front of a camera. And seeing the film, I see myself giving a very different performance. I mean, as objective as I can be. It's a very different sort of John Lithgow up there, much more like me.
Did you want to say something now?
Well, you know, specifically, so for people who are interested in filmmaking and the process, I don't rehearse my actors before we start shooting. So, you know, the thing that he doesn't talk about, and very few actors do, memorizing your lines is work. And it's not just memorizing your lines, meaning like knowing them by rote. It means knowing them internally. And that's the thing that it's actually it's challenging to internalize the work. But what I hope for on set is that we block the scenes the day that we're shooting, and in the process of shooting, we are in a way rehearsing because we're given so many options and time to try new things out. But we just haven't had a lot of conversation, hopefully almost no conversation, about what the scene is about. Because we don't want that to be the motive, the kind of, the actor shouldn't be trying to spell things for the audience.
I find that so often with the sort of shoot time frame that you had, not rehearsing, and sort of the philosophy of catching fire, so often it's improvisational, and directors are looking for actors to improvise. But it sounds to me like you guys were going pretty straight off the script.
Well, John actually said the hard thing about working with me is I want it very loose and totally precise per word in terms of the script, and I think that sounds hard to me, but you know.
Well, Ira was one of the co-writers with Mauricio Zacharias, and it's a perfect script. You don't want to mess around with a script like this. The only improvised scene was one in which Cheyenne Jackson and several others play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's only because that's how you play Dungeons and Dragons. You improvise.
Yeah, where did that come from? I know a lot of people here haven't seen it, but there is a great scene where Cheyenne Jackson is playing Dungeons and Dragons in his house, and there's supposed to be a kind of loud apartment that are always hanging out, having a party, but for whatever reason, that is Dungeons and Dragons in this instance, which I've never experienced in a New York City apartment.
Well, you know, a lot of the film, it's not an autobiographical film, but it's a very personal film, and a lot of the people in the film, at least initially, came from characters in my life. When I first met my now husband, Boris Torres, he was living in one floor of a townhouse in the West Village. On the middle floor was the man who owned the house, who was named Michael Zimmer, and he was a very eccentric, Ben-like person. And on the top floor were two gay cops, gay policemen, who were a couple, one of whom is like Rock Hudson good looking, and he's like this stereotype of like Superman or something, and yet has this boyish quality. He's obsessed with fantasy games. In fact, right here on 8th Street, there's a fantasy store, and that's kind of where he hangs out. And he, so to me, the contrast between this man who was all these different things, including very open with his sexuality in the police force, was really wonderful. Those two cops were at the screening last night, and they saw the movie for the first time.
Did they know that they had a sort of cameo in it?
Very much so. I was really worried because at one point, one of the characters, Alfred Molina, mentions that he and John, that they refer to this couple as the police women. And that was a term we did sometimes use.
Did they know that?
I'm blushing now. They laughed.
Well, was that a term that you used privately though, or did you use that with them?
Privately.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting point, which is so much of your work is personal, and you talk about it being personal. I'm wondering how, when you're writing, you're able to decide whether or not the personal works or it doesn't work, when to exaggerate, when to take away, when you've gone too far with somebody else's biography.
Well, those are a lot of questions.
It's about 7.
Well, I think as a writer, I try to draw upon the things I know better than anyone else. So the characters are often inspired by, like Marissa Tomei in the film plays a novelist who is living with a filmmaker husband played by Darren Burroughs, who's shooting television, which all my friends, by the way, who are filmmakers of my generation, they're all working in television now, and that's someone I knew. And Marissa's character is really inspired by a bunch of novelists I know who are trying to also raise kids and be moms, and so I introduced the two to Marissa to a couple of those women, and she really got it right. She really got the details right. I think as soon as I start writing, and I have a great collaborator, I'm not reporting. So I'm not trying to get the biography right. They become the character, but there's a lot to draw upon.
John, we talked about your character earlier and this sort of flighty spaciness that you add to it. I don't know if you could get the sense from the trailer, but so often in the film, it feels like John Lithgow's character is staring off into space and just not really paying attention to what's happening around him. And you talked about the decision to do that and decisions that you've made with characters in World According to Garp. How do you come at these decisions? Are they on the page? Is it just using your imagination? Or how do you inform these decisions?
I feel like the decisions are almost made for me. They're not that conscious. I sort of knew Ben by the time I reached the last page of the script, the first time I ever read it. He is an artist. I've always wanted to play an artist. He has a quality that many artists that I know have, which is a kind of abstraction, kind of thinking about something else all the time, not quite on the same wavelength with everybody else in the room. I'm a little like that myself. You may have noticed me staring off into space while Ira was talking. And my father is very like that. Weirdly, when you grow to be my age and you see yourself up on a screen, you see your father. It's very unsettling and very moving. But I not only do I see him up there on screen, but I thought of him consciously in playing the part.
What was the part that you first saw your father?
When we sit there in the real estate office, raise your hands if you've seen this film yet. When I come back in 2 weeks, I want to see everyone's hands up. I and Fred's character, George, we sit in a kind of municipal city government real estate office helping people find in the desperate search for a place to live. And clearly George is in their partnership, George is the one who takes care of the pragmatics, the finances, the real estate. He's the only one who works. Ben doesn't even work. He has
a pension.
He does have a pension, and he considers that his job, collecting his pension. But as they sit there in the real estate office, there's a moment when I just lose interest and stare off, like I'm interested in something else. That is so much my father, and I deduce so much me.
Is that the first time you've seen yourself playing a part in a movie and thought of your father? Were there parts before that?
No, frequently. I mean, we're genetically connected. We move the same, we look the same. My siblings always say, "You were just like Dad," you know.
Going back to his decision to be a little spacey, and you said that that was something new for you, that he brought that to the set, and that goes back to what we're talking about in the 3 different films that you make. What was your response when you first saw him doing that?
Well, I didn't see it as in a piece. I saw it as a part of a character, and to me, I think actors, and he's been very nice about the script, but they in this case, at least these actors, they underestimate what they bring to a role. You really don't cast actors, you cast people. Like, it's really important to understand that. And that doesn't mean they're playing themselves, because they are working within the script and the story, and they have this extraordinary craft. With John, you also have this extraordinary sense of humor, which I think is really a part of the movie. But they shape the role. They write paragraphs for you. So I just try to be, I think I could have been, the only other job I could have had would be a psychoanalyst. And I think the role is very similar. You sit and you observe and you try to have empathy and an analytic distance, which allows you to view. But you also try to step back a little bit and let things happen.
Let's open it up for questions for a minute. Does anyone have any questions right now for John or Ira about Love is Strange? I've got a lot more, if you don't. I've been going for an hour and 20 now, maybe? Like, we can just keep...
It's been a very nice conversation, Ricky.
That's really sweet.
My compliments to you.
John's a very sweet man. Thank you.
It's true.
You said that... Did anyone raise their hand? Just want to make sure. I don't want to step on anybody. You said that one of the reasons that you cast Alfred, and I'm sure you were aware of his work prior to this, but was Rahad Jackson in Boogie Nights, right?
Yeah, that performance has always stuck to me as just brilliant.
If
really.
anyone doesn't know what performance that is in Boogie Nights, it is the party boy that Mark Wahlberg and his crew try to sell fake drugs to, who pulls out a gun with one bullet in it. He tries to blow his own head off as a joke. He's just smoking crack with a little Chinese man that he keeps calling Cosmo and patting in the butt. It's a great scene.
I think Alfred Molina would be really happy to hear you call him a party boy.
Well, that's what. Oh no! They work at Party Boys. Someone says, Thomas Jane says, you met me down at Party Boys.
Oh, okay, good. It was a detail. I think people have been calling Alfred Molina a man for a long time. What I didn't know about Alfred is that he would be such a sweetheart, a teddy bear, really. And I think that is because he's done all these this wide range of performance, and I like the fact that he's always very he finds an authenticity in even this larger-than-life character that's very human. And it's a kind of detailed work that I really respond to in cinema in general, which is a very nuanced, kind of subtle, but also strong. You make decisions. And I think that's something about the two characters that John and Alfred play that I love about them, is they're very humble people. When one of them loses their job because he's a choir director and he gets fired from the Catholic Church by the Catholic Church and he loses his job, he doesn't fight back, but he also doesn't deny who he is. And there's a confidence in these men that's very appealing. And I think that's so much why people want to spend time with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Tal?
Yeah. I have a question, actually, John. You started, or I don't even know how you started off, but you play such a range of comedic roles to, the serial killer I mentioned on Dexter. What attributes or what do you think led you to have that range, and what do you think adds to the fact that people can believe in you from that spectrum of being like someone who they hate to someone that they love to this serious role?
Well, I think it's. Thank you for that compliment. Objectively, I think it's because I came out of the theater. Specifically, I grew up in a theater family where my father produced summer Shakespeare festivals, and all through my childhood, I participated in the family business. I I must have played 20 Shakespearean roles before I was 20 years old. Always small roles, the utility roles. They tended to be roles whose names only had one syllable, like Pinch and Froth and Nym and Poins. I finally graduated to Guildenstern and Hortensio, but I never played Hamlet. And when you think of the Shakespearean canon or the repertory of a Shakespearean company, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, but he also wrote Comedy of Errors. He wrote King Lear, but he wrote Merry Wives of Windsor. If you spend a whole summer doing 6 Shakespeare plays, you're working in 6 extremely different modes, night by night. And to me, unwittingly, that's kind of what my career has been like. My favorite thing is to do something as different as possible than from the last thing I did.
That's interesting because you were talking about how in your film, while it's dramatic, it was interesting for you to work with actors that had comedic training.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you say from role to role, and I'd say within a role, that's very crucial to find the different shades of the performance, including, I think it's important for most of us artists to try to develop our sense of humor, because it doesn't mean necessarily we're jokesters, though there are some jokes in this film. I think sense of humor in a way is connected to maybe a developing wisdom in the sense of not taking yourself too seriously, which I have to say, you know, we're the oldest 2 guys in the room, I think, John and I. It's something that I feel like it's about growing older, and I feel as a part of Love is Strange is that I have more perspective, and the film is about perspective. You have 3 stories. You have John and Fred, which we've been talking about. This older couple has been together for 40 years, but then you have Marissa Tomei and Darren Burroughs, who play a husband and wife who are very much in the middle, trying to figure out what's ahead, what's possible, what they deserve, what they can ask for. Very middle-aged questions. And then you have a kid played by this really extraordinary young actor named Charlie Tahan, who is an adolescent and discovering many things for the very first time. And for me, the film is about all those different perspectives. And for all of you, if you gain more sense of humor, it helps somehow.
The central relationship has lasted for 40 years. You can't last 40 years without a sense of humor. And between Alfred and me, there was an enormous sense of fun and hilarity. And we managed to bring that into the film.
We have a question, I'm being told. Right here.
Yeah, this is a question for both of you guys. What was your favorite scene to shoot that we should look out for when we all go see the movie?
For me, it was unquestionably my scene. As much as I loved working with Alfred, my favorite scene was with Marissa, when I'm driving her completely crazy because I won't stop talking while she's trying to work. I think that is a perfect scene because it tells the story. I love playing a character with duality. In this case, Ben's duality is a very endearing man who can drive you completely crazy. And I loved the very delicate balance.
How much fun was it for you to do that scene? Because I imagine it took a day, a few hours, where you just got to be the annoying little brother for a whole day.
I loved it. I loved the scene from the moment I read the script. It may be the scene that sold me completely because it comes quite early on. And it's a wonderful piece of comic writing, even though it's a scene shot through with anxiety.
Yeah, it's much better than I could have hoped for, that scene, to be honest. And I think that's a lot because of Marissa and John, and it is because of Marissa and John. I think we did a good job shooting it and writing it, but it's a fine comic scene, and I feel proud of that. You know, my first thought when that question came up is none of them. Because it's very hard to direct a movie, to be honest. It's a lot of pressure to try to be focused enough to rein in the kind of circus-like atmosphere and to do something that's very, very precise. And I enjoy it immensely, and I don't enjoy it at all.
Talk about that. I feel like in interviews like this, rarely do directors talk about how much they may not enjoy directing a movie some days, or most days.
Yeah. that's why I thought, this is about creativity and process. And so for me, my last film was called Keep the Lights On, and it was all about the difficulties those characters, and it was a very autobiographical film, faced in being honest with themselves and with other people. And I have found it's a relief to try to just say what is. And directing is challenging, as is a lot of things. I think I feel confident in directing. There's no panic. I do feel like I'm in a very good zone, and I totally know what I need to get there. Like, I know all the elements that I need to do it, and that includes a lot of my collaborators.
Is that a new thing for you, that confidence, or was that something that you exuded on your second movie?
I think it was slightly genetic or grain or environmental, or whatever you want to call it. I think I started directing theater in high school. It was always a role, the kind of collaborative artist who works with other people to express something singularly was something I came to it was natural to me.
Absolutely. We have another question, I'm told. Someone has a microphone. Hey.
Ira and John, thank you so much for this film. I look forward to seeing it. But I would like you to actually dig deeper or be as meta as you want to be. And if you can share with us, what is the part of your process that you enjoy the most, and what is the one that is the most painful, if there's any?
My favorite thing is acting, and my least favorite thing is waiting. It's Walter Matthau once said, "I act for free. It's the waiting they paid me for." I mean, it's a long, tedious process, and I, who work in the theater so much, in the theater, you live through the story with the audience, and it's constantly engaged, as long as you have a big part. Not so movies. Movies are a terribly halting stop-start process, out of sequence. There are days that are extraordinarily tedious. Not so much in independent films, because things have to go fast. Wasn't true of sitcom, because things had to go lightning fast. But I'm an impatient guy. I want to get out there and act.
I would imagine with Ira, I'll let you answer the question in just a second, but going off of that, the tediousness of having to do certain films, big films, you've done so many films over the years. With a play, you sort of know what you're getting at the end of the day. With an independent film, with a script like Ira's, I assumed you knew pretty much what you were getting at the end of the day. How often that tediousness did not pay off for something that you had hoped to see pay off?
I would say it did not pay off about 73% of the time. I don't know.
That's a man who's made a lot of movies.
Making movies is always the triumph of hope over experience. You're disappointed far more often than you're pleased with the end result, just because your perception of what you're doing is so completely different from the way you're always saying, "Why didn't they use that shot? Why didn't they use my close-up? I was so good on that one. Why is that scene gone?" I once went to a premiere of a film I was in. I had 6 scenes in the film, and only half of one scene was left, and nobody had told me. That's not a happy experience. Love is Strange has been a very happy experience. It's successful beyond my dreams.
It deserves it. Ira?
It's interesting because as a director, you don't wait. You on set, you're always working. The cinematographer works the hardest. They never have a moment down because they're just always, as soon as you've blocked it, then they have to light it, then they have to shoot it, then they have to block it. So I think that's in a way one of the most demanding jobs on a set. But a director is always thinking, and I find that if I get bored for a minute, then something's wrong, and I try to figure out why. Because if I'm bored, then I really know the audience is going to be bored. So I have to figure out what's dead, and so I shift things around. I do. It's like an alarm goes off if I'm not really interested in what's happening in front of me.
Is that while working on set, or is that with the content itself, the script or the edit?
That's really about production.
Yeah.
And when they're shooting, and like even though you're going to see it 30 times, different takes, different sizes, I have to be really interested. if I pull back, then I'm not doing what I need to do. For me, the most pleasurable is actually editing a film. And I think because it's the one point in the process where you have a kind of normal job, where you know you've spent money and you know you have the money to finish the film, and you're going into an office and you're going to start at 9-ish and you're going to have a bagel, and then you're going to work with a really great collaborator and drink coffee and get a little lunch, but you're going to keep working, and then it's me about 6:30. I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to come back the next day, and for that time, that kind of ordinariness, while at the same time being extraordinarily stimulating. Yeah. And you've done all the heavy lifting of raising the money and having shot the film is really wonderful. Raising the money is by far the least pleasurable part of making a movie, by far, but it's the part that I don't engage in passively. I think the reason I'm still here as an independent director, which is not an easy place to be to sustain a career, is because I take responsibility for making the film happen with my collaborators, with my other producers, and so it's,
Last word, John?
Yes, I've thought of another. My least favorite thing is promoting a film that I dislike. And one of my favorite
that he
things...
dislikes.
That I dislike. One of my favorite things is promoting a film that I love, and that's this one.
It's a great film. We have to say thank you and wrap this up. Ira, John, thank you for talking to me for 6 hours today. It's been a pleasure.
You've been great, just great.
Let's give it a hand. I said it before on HuffPost Live. I'll say it now. Go see Love is Strange. It's a really amazing film. And we're so honored to have you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.